When you think of a world war, you probably jump to the 20th century, right? World War I, World War II.
Mm.
But what if I told you the first true world war was fought over 250 years ago? We're talking about the 7 Years' War from 1754 to 1763.
And it was truly global, fought in Europe, North America, India, the Caribbean. I mean, literally on every major ocean.
It's this huge, sprawling conflict.
Exactly. So our mission for you today is pretty clear. We're going to unpack why this thing started on two continents at pretty much the same time.
We'll track the fighting, and then, and this is the most important part, we'll see how the end of this one war basically redrew the map of the modern world.
It's a conflict that shows how local fights can spiral into a global catastrophe.
Let's get right into it. Why did this global fight just explode? Well, the fuse was definitely lit in North America. The big issue was this intense rivalry between Great Britain and France.
And then it all centered on one specific place, the Ohio River Valley.
Right, why there?
Because that valley meant two totally different things to them. For the British, it was all about settlement. Their colonies were growing, and they needed to push west.
They needed more land.
Exactly. But for the French, that valley was all about trade. It was the crucial link for their fur trading networks.
So it connected the Great Lakes all the way down to Louisiana.
So when British colonists start building forts there, it's not just a land grab. It's a direct threat to France's entire economic model in the Americas.
And this is the part that makes it global. While all this is happening, these skirmishes in the American wilderness, old tensions in Europe are boiling over.
Right. At the very same time, you have Prussia and Austria getting ready to fight again.
Over a province called Silesia.
A really rich, important province that Prussia had just sort of stolen from Austria a few years earlier. And Austria wanted it back badly.
So you have these two separate conflicts.
A colonial land dispute and an old European power struggle.
Both hitting their boiling point at the exact same moment. So when war is formally declared in 1756, it was already a worldwide event from day one.
Without that European dimension, the fighting in America might have just stayed a small border war. But with it, suddenly every colony, everywhere, was a target.
Let's stick with North America for a bit. We usually call this part the French and Indian War.
Right. And early on, the French had a major advantage, even though they had way fewer settlers.
And that was their alliances with Native American tribes.
Those alliances were absolutely key. The British Army just wasn't prepared for the kind of fighting they found themselves in.
They're used to standing in neat rows on an open field.
Exactly. And that's useless in a dense forest against warriors who know the land and are using, guerrilla tactics. So the British suffered some really bad defeats at the start.
But then the tide starts to turn, and this is where the global part of the war really kicks in.
The Royal Navy.
The British Royal Navy starts setting up blockades across the Atlantic.
And controlling the ocean was everything. The Navy just stopped French ships from getting across, which meant no reinforcements, no trade goods.
And most importantly, no ammunition or food for their troops. It completely choked the French war effort.
It was a game changer.
A total game changer. It allowed the British to start capturing key French forts. They took Louisbourg in 1758.
Which was huge. It controlled the entrance to the St. Lawrence River, the lifeline to the heart of New France.
And then, of course, the big one, the capture of Quebec in 1759.
The fall of Quebec was the symbolic end, really. And when Montreal fell the next year, in 1760, that was it for major combat in North America. Britain was in control.
Okay, so while all that's happening back in Europe, it's a completely different kind of war. We're talking massive armies, huge battles.
And at the center of it is Prussia, led by Frederick the Great. And Frederick is just surrounded. He's got France, Russia, and Austria all coming for him.
It's amazing he survived.
It really is. Britain helped him, but not with soldiers. They just poured money into his treasury. They basically bankrolled his entire defense.
So Frederick, who is a brilliant general, is just constantly outnumbered, nearly defeated several times.
But he keeps pulling out these incredible victories. He manages to hold on, and that ensures Prussia stays a major European power.
Ooh!
But the cost, the devastation in Central Europe was just immense. So we've seen the war on land in America and Europe, but you said it earlier, this war was ultimately decided on the water.
Absolutely. It all comes back to the British Royal Navy.
So it wasn't just that it was big. It was that Britain maintained a permanent navy.
Yeah.
It was consistently funded. It had docks and supply depots all over the world.
So they could keep their ships at sea for longer and project power everywhere. It allowed them to protect their own trade and just hammer French commerce.
And those blockades weren't just for North America. They stopped French ships from getting to the Caribbean, to Africa.
And to India. They even won this massive sea battle at Quiberon Bay in 59.
Which was so important because it completely crushed any realistic hope France had of trying to invade Britain itself.
Okay, so that global reach you mentioned, that takes us to India.
Yes. And the rivalry there wasn't just Britain versus France. It was the British East India Company versus the French East India Company.
So two giant corporations fighting for control of the trade in spices, silk, tea.
All the really lucrative stuff. And the way they fought was by making alliances with local Indian rulers, the Nawabs and Rajas. They would offer military support in exchange for trading rights.
The whole situation was incredibly complex.
And the turning point there came in 1757 at the Battle of Plassey. The British commander, Robert Clive, won this just stunning victory.
It was as much about political deals and betrayals as it was about fighting.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
And with that win, the British East India Company basically seized control of Bengal, which was the wealthiest province in India.
So by the end of the war, French influence in India is pretty much gone. This one war set the stage for 200 years of British rule on the subcontinent.
Incredible, isn't it?
And while India was about future wealth, the Caribbean was about instant cash.
The sugar islands. Immensely valuable. Sugar and coffee were like oil today.
The most profitable things you could trade. So Britain launches these big attacks, right?
Yeah, amphibious assaults. They capture key French islands like Guadeloupe and Martinique. And later, after Spain joins the war, they even managed to capture Havana in Cuba.
Which was a massive blow to Spain, the jewel of their Caribbean empire.
But the fighting in the tropics?
Yeah.
It was horrific.
Not because of the combat either.
No, not at all. Thousands and thousands of soldiers died, but from disease. Yellow fever, malaria, the heat, the bad sanitation. It was far deadlier than any cannon.
So the loss of these islands was a huge financial hit for France.
A devastating one. While Britain's merchants were getting richer, the French treasury was just bleeding money.
We should circle back to the role of the Native American nations. It's so important.
It's pivotal, and it wasn't simple. Their decisions were strategic.
Right. Many tribes, especially around the Great Lakes, sided with the French.
And you can see why. The French were mostly interested in trade. They weren't trying to clear huge areas of land for towns and farms.
Which is exactly what the British colonists wanted to do. So for the tribes, the British posed a much greater existential threat.
And those indigenous warriors were essential to the French. They were scouts, they were guides, and their fighting style was perfect for the terrain.
You also had groups like the powerful Iroquois Confederacy trying to stay neutral, to play both sides against each other to protect their own interests.
Which was a very difficult balancing act. But the sad reality is, after the war, British promises to limit colonial expansion were, well, they were almost immediately broken.
So the war ended up weakening the position of nearly all the Native American nations.
Massively.
And you mentioned Spain getting into the war. That was really late in the game, right? 1762?
Very late. They joined as an ally of France. There was this thing called the Family Compact, basically an agreement between the related royal families of France and Spain.
And why join then?
They were terrified of how powerful Britain was becoming. They saw Britain's navy and its colonial expansion, and I think realized they might be next.
A decision they regretted pretty quickly.
Immediately. Britain's navy just went to work and captured two huge Spanish ports almost instantly. Havana, like we said, and all the way on the other side of the world, Manila in the Philippines.
Wow. From the Caribbean to Southeast Asia, it really shows the global scale.
And before we get to the end, it's worth thinking about the regular soldier in all this. Life for them was just awful.
Yeah. Hot wool uniforms, marching for miles, carrying all that heavy gear.
And the food was terrible.
Right.
Rock-hard bread, salted meat that was barely edible.
But the real killer, as we said, was disease. Poor sanitation in the camps meant typhus, dysentery. Those things killed far more soldiers than combat ever did.
And they were expected to fight in these long, straight lines, marching slowly toward an enemy who is also in a long, straight line and just firing volleys. It's terrifying to even imagine.
So, after almost a decade of this global fighting, it all ends in 1763, the Treaty of Paris.
And this treaty didn't just end the war. It completely redrew the map of the world. It cemented Great Britain as the world's #1 superpower, no question.
The changes in North America were staggering.
France was basically kicked off the continent. They gave Canada and all their land east of the Mississippi River to Britain.
And to get Havana back from the British, Spain had to give up Florida.
Right. And as compensation, France gave Spain the huge Louisiana territory. So a total reshuffling.
But that victory came with a massive, massive price tag for Britain.
The cost of victory, as historians call it, fighting a war on 5 continents creates an absolutely astronomical national debt.
And this is the part you absolutely need to remember. This is the key connection.
To pay down that debt, the British government looks at the American colonists and says, you benefited from this war, so you should help pay for it.
So Parliament starts passing new taxes. On sugar, on paper goods, with the Stamp Act.
And the colonists are furious. But it wasn't really about the money.
No, it was the principle. Their slogan was, no taxation without representation.
They had no one in the British Parliament to represent them, to vote on these taxes. And that anger, that ideological fire,
leads directly to the American Revolutionary War just 12 years later. The end of this war created the beginning of the next one.
And it wasn't just Britain. The French government was also financially ruined by the war.
They spent a fortune and they lost their most profitable colonies.
And that massive debt just festered. It became one of the major factors that contributed to the outbreak of the French Revolution a few decades later.
So the legacy is just enormous. It proved how vital a powerful navy and global trade were to building an empire.
And the borders drawn in 1763 still shape countries like the United States and Canada today. It really set the stage for the modern world.
So the one core idea to take away from all this is simple. A fight over a valley in America and a province in Europe spiraled into a war that changed the world.
And maybe the most interesting part, the winner, Britain, and the loser, France, both ended up facing massive society-changing revolutions because of the cost of the war.
The victory was so expensive, it cost Britain its American colonies, and the defeat was so expensive, it cost the French king his crown. An incredible outcome.
Good luck with your studies.